Welcome to this KnowledgeSmart support video where I will run through some essential tips and tricks that you can use when editing KnowledgeSmart assessments or even creating your own bespoke assessment content. So let's dive right in. Tip number 1 is about importing content over to the draft site. Before hitting this icon here and importing a specific test over to the draft site, first go and check under draft content and draft tests if there isn't an existing copy already. Re-importing it many times creates a vast library of duplicate questions with little extra value. It is also best practice guidance to not edit anything without renaming it first. So if you do find the assessment that you want to work with, take a copy of that test here and then go and make your required changes by perhaps changing the test name, reconfiguring the test, or editing the test settings. Tip number 2 is about grouping and category tags. So the minute that you have now renamed your test, it is a good idea to go and add a unique category tag to that test so that you can later find your content easily. This is done under test settings, and you'll notice this area here called category tags. So if I go and add a category tag here called LT, just as an abbreviation of my initials perhaps, and click finish. If I now go to draft tests and I activate search and I put in LT, immediately the system produces that content for me. The other side of tip number 2 is about grouping. So I appreciate that at this stage, this library appears quite small and compact, but libraries can increase in size over a period of time. So it's a good idea to create a group name for your assessments. So maybe you want to create a group for all assessments in the year 2021. So you would add a group and then just go and add the assessments that you want to add to that group by selecting those little boxes there on the right, and then just going to add to group at the top, selecting the group name and click add. So now those assessments are grouped under this group name for me. So this really helps down the line because you will be able to find the content you're looking for quite easily. Tip number 3 is about keeping track of IDs. So you will notice that whether you are in draft tests, draft modules, or draft questions, there will be a unique ID number attached to that element that you're working with. This ID number changes when you import content from the published side to the draft side. And the higher the ID number, the most recent the edit. So that all helps us keep track of the most recent content. Tip number 4 is going to be about tagging. So whether you are editing existing content or creating bespoke content, category and training tags is an essential element and should not be skipped. So we've already touched on category tags when we looked at test settings and noticed that we can add a unique tag there. Under draft modules and hovering our mouse over the edit module, we notice that we have the ability to add a module tag, a category tag for that specific module. When we move down to draft questions and do the same thing, and go down to question tags for draft questions, we notice two different tags available. The one is category tags, and the next one is training tags. Now, training tags is absolutely essential because it is the training tags that helps us report on skill gaps and also is the connector between the KnowledgeSmart platform and then personalized training content delivered via our direct integration with Pinnacle Series from Eagle Point Software. If we are creating bespoke content, we notice that of course the training tags are blank, and it's a good idea here to keep your learning content in mind when refining your training tags. You can tag your questions with accompanying training recommendations and just separating each entry with a comma. And then one last comment on category tags. They can also be very useful to provide additional feedback to other team members working on the same platform. So here we are looking at a module tag again, and we notice a tag that says LT requires an edit. So I have perhaps reviewed this module and decided that it needs an edit. So I'm giving feedback to other administrators inside the platform that we need to review this module, or perhaps another kind of tag approved for the London office. So someone has reviewed the content and approved it for use. So I can use category tags to help me organize my content, as we can see there. And I can also use it to provide additional feedback to help me organize the content for future use. Tip number 5 is about utilizing the batch edit tool when needing to perform bulk actions, and this can really help save a lot of time. So you will find the batch export icon here next to the Excel CSV export icon. So we'll just go ahead and click that. And when we open up that file inside Excel, we notice that the assessment content has been exported for us. So you can then review the content and make any changes that you need, just keeping the data architecture and the existing tags in place. So say, for example, you want to add some more training tags at a bulk level, or perhaps you want to add a category tag to all of the questions. The bulk export import tool would be very well placed for that. So this is where you would then make your changes, and then once you are ready, you would just save that. We would then head back into the admin dashboard, batch edit, and import our content. And we would now just get a review message to say the following questions are now ready for importing, import questions. And that will then bring in all of that content. And one good thing to remember about batch import is that our system will automatically create a group for you with a date stamp. So when you import the content, you will notice under draft test questions, there will be a group link with that date. So we can see there that import that I just did, 14th of June 2021, and that will then show me all of those questions that I've just imported. Tip number 6 is about keeping your data clean and utilizing preview before actually launching your assessment plan. So when you're pasting in content from Word, for example, please use the paste from Word icon here so that the data can be cleaned up. And once you have entered your data, for example, there, you would select the magnifying glass icon to get a quick preview of what that question text would look like. To add a blank line between your question wording, hold down Shift and hit Enter. and then again. And that would keep your spacing intact. So instead of just hitting enter, make sure that you hold down shift and then hit enter, and that will create the right spacing for you there. Tip number 7 is about character limits. So always keep character limits in mind so as to avoid error messages later on. So a question name has 75 characters. The question summary box or description has 3,000 characters. The module name is the same as the question name, so 75. Assessment or test name is 50. Assessment description is 1,000 characters. All question answers have a 50 character limit. Coaching text and learning text have 3,000 character limit. And category tags and training tags have a 400 category limit. A handy tool to use for counting characters is lettercount.com. So that's www.lettercount.com. For a handy reminder around character limitations, just hover your mouse over the question mark icon and you will see reference to the character limit there within the wording. The same is available under step 2 of the edit test question process. When you hover your mouse over the question mark icon, you will see that character limit under name and also the character limit under question text. Under create test, we see reference to the character limit there again, as well as the test description that I mentioned. Tip number 8 when creating bespoke content is about enriching your assessment content with multimedia files. So you might want to include an image, a movie, a dataset file to then clarify or explain your question wording. A task-based question, whether it be into a task-based interrogate or task-based modify question, requires you to upload a dataset file. And it's also here that you would then upload that specific dataset file. Tip number 9 is about using coaching notes and links to learning. So coaching text, which is how the author would have approached the question accurately, is very helpful in leading the user to the best approach in terms of that specific question. Coaching files, perhaps a screenshot of the correct answer, a help sheet, a video outlining the required steps, are all useful inputs. Links to learning allows us to drop in a video link or perhaps a webinar link or link to an internal company document so that the user is linked to this learning material within their assessment report. So this can be very helpful to connect the user to that relevant learning content as well. Tip number 10 is about answer precision. So when we look at our free text questions, we notice that this is a decimal based question. So we might want to adjust by showing the system that it is a numeric answer, firstly. We might want to allow a variance. So to say my lower variance is 155.79 and my upper variance is 155.82, and I might say if they score within those variance points, I'm only going to award 75% of the question score. And then I also have the option to activate a precision hint so that the user is guided in terms of how many decimal places to use in their answer. The other way answer precision can work is perhaps it is not a numeric answer, and we have this option called case and white space variance. So when we select that, the system will award 100% even if the user has used a capital letter where perhaps it wasn't needed, or added a specific white space where that is not needed either. So we allow for that, and you can decide whether to still award 100% or make this a bit lower. The next tip is about working the structure of the system. So we need to keep in mind that each assessment consists of a group of modules, and each module consists of a group of questions. And that allows us to analyze at assessment level, at module level, or at question level. So when you're creating your own content, don't just group all your questions into one module, because that doesn't really allow for a rich modular analysis. Modules provide a framework by which to group your questions, either via topic, skill level, or question type. So keep that in mind. The next tip is about test settings again. So let's go through a few more elements here. Do not skip adjusting test settings, because there is some important elements here. It's under test settings that we're able to allow for a time limit to be linked to the assessment. We have the option to show the timer or take it away. We have the option to allow file downloads. Those are those dataset files. We can either share them separately via an intranet folder, or we can allow it during the assessment process. We have the option to add a unique welcome message and some special instructions, and we have the option to append a survey that we created inside the survey platform here. And lastly, exam mode, which allows us to populate some exam bands and show those instead of assessment scores. My next tip is about multiple choice questions, and sometimes having, longer answers. And because there is a 50 character limit, it is sometimes challenging in terms of how to word that and how to deal with that scenario. So here I will advise you to create your question text and include your answer options, as for example, option A is this, option B is this. So you include your options here and detail them within your question text. And then you would have under your answer options only option A, option B, option C, option D. So instead of having that long wording here, you would actually specify that under question text. The next tip is going to be about how do I go and add additional questions to a module. So I've opened up a module and I see that I need a few more questions here. Did you know that when you import content over into the draft side, our system automatically creates a group for you? So instead of having to search through the entire library, use this drop down here and navigate to the specific group of questions that you want to search through. You would then just add the additional questions by selecting the plus icon here. My next tip is about grouping and searching under draft test questions. So just highlighting that you can search via question type, via question category, and even via skill level here. And once you have found suitable questions that you might like to group in an assessment, always create a group and then add those questions to that group so that you can find that content easily later on. My next tip is about task-based versus knowledge-based questions. So a lot of our published content is published in such a way that you can easily remove task-based questions or knowledge-based questions from an assessment. So you will notice a K for knowledge-based questions and a T for task-based questions. So if you want to take away the task-based questions, just remove them here, leaving behind only knowledge-based questions. My last tip about reviewing content within the platform is about clicking on a module name or a question name for more detail. So here we are under draft modules, and I can click on a question name to be presented with a summary box of what is covered inside that question. So here I can quickly read the question text, look at the question type, look at the question category, perhaps any specific training tags, and then I can decide whether to keep that question or not. If I don't want that question, I can just remove it right here from within the draft module platform. So that's very handy if I quickly want to review. If I later on see that I like this question, but I need to go and add a unique category tag or make changes to answer precision, I can easily do that then under draft questions. So working the system and using grouping and searching really helps speed things up. I've navigated down to my group I'm working with. I have added a search parameter of free text questions, and now I can quickly go and change my answer precision of all of my free text questions in one quick workflow. Tip number 18 is about including a few ranking questions in your assessment. These are questions where the user is asked to put the answer options into the correct order. They are very effective to test a user's ability to use a tool properly, and it can be helpful in increasing their abilities even if they don't know the answer. So make sure to include the question type order list in every assessment if possible. So you will find a big selection of order list questions in our library, but you might also want to create a few order list questions of your own. Tip number 19 is about utilizing the ability to append a survey created on the general survey platform to your assessment. And this can be used for gathering additional feedback from the users about the assessment experience, or perhaps general feedback about other work-related matters. So once again, under test settings is where you will find this survey area, and there will be a drop-down list of any surveys that you have created. You can simply come and select the appropriate survey and then click Finish. The user will then be presented with a prompt at the end of the assessment to then go ahead and answer the survey questions. My very last tip today is about when you're creating your own questions, and perhaps you are a Pinnacle Series customer from Eagle Point Software, and you want to really work the integration between KnowledgeSmart and Pinnacle Series, is to maybe look at the learning tags of the learning paths that you have identified within Pinnacle Series to then help guide the training tags that you will enter here, of course separating each one via a comma. I hope that you have found this video on tips and tricks related to the KnowledgeSmart assessment library helpful. Please feel free to reach out to us with your comments and suggestions for other videos that you might find helpful.